Well, welcome to What's Next on 93.7 The Ticket with Mike and Sherry and our producer, Harrison. Our mission is to bring you inspiring stories and insightful discussions to help you create your best life. I'm so excited. On today's show, we're going to review a book called Veterans Led by John Barry. The book delves into leadership principles that have shaped the legacy of the Barry Law Firm. I want to give a little background to Lincoln. You probably know the name, John Barry. It may sound familiar. Barry Law was founded by John Stevens Barry Sr. since 1965. Barry Law has grown from a small practice to America's veterans law firm, dedicated to empowering veterans across the nation. We're going to highlight three key features in the book today: leadership and legacy, veteran empowerment, and personal stories. And I can't wait. And with that, Sherry, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our special guest today.
And don't thank people because I'm going to keep my comments very short today.
Okay.
So out of character, I know. Please welcome Mr. John Barry. He's a dedicated attorney at Barry Law in Lincoln and Omaha. John's a proud military veteran, and thank you for your service, by the way, and leads a law firm focused on criminal defense, personal injury, and veterans' disability benefits. He's authored a book called Veteran Led. It's a book highlighting three main features: leadership principles. He gives insights from his military experience on integrity, accountability, and resilience. Veteran empowerment, practical advice for veterans transitioning to civilian life. Advocacy and support. He gives strategies for supporting and advocating for veterans' rights. John's commitment to justice and unique perspective as a veteran makes him a respected figure in both the legal and the veteran communities. Please join us in welcoming John Barry.
Hi, John. How are you this
Hi,
morning?
Michael and Sherry. Thanks so much for having me this morning.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I know you just came from a flight from Chicago. How was your flight?
Same as it always is. No, it was good. There was no delays. I got here on time. I can't complain.
Oh, that's good.
Oh yeah, no, especially this time of year.
Well, John, let's kind of dive in. And in the first segment, I really like, give us the background, would you, of family and growing up in Lincoln.
Yeah, what a great experience. I had a paper out since I was 10 years old. I remember about that time I started playing midget football for Leon's.
Leon's, yeah.
My mom showed me how to how to wash my own clothes, how to use some of those appliances around the house, and I was off and running.
You had a great
because
mom.
I had to wash my uniforms, right? So
you had a great mom.
right, and we had 4 kids. So I had a sister, 2 brothers, and we grew up right in the middle of Lincoln. And I had a bike, and we went everywhere on our bikes. And I really didn't have a lot of rules, not a lot of curfews. My parents taught there are actions and there are consequences. Now sometimes I would screw up, but they would be like, "Oh, well, you were out too late. That's great. You got to get up for practice tomorrow. How are you going to get there?" And so they were just very. I wouldn't say. I had a lot of friends whose parents were strict. My parents were not strict. They were very, I think, open to me doing what I wanted to do, so long as I got the results that I wanted and I didn't get in trouble. That was it.
But they held you accountable.
Oh, they made me hold myself accountable.
That's the whole key right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, hey, actions and consequences.
Yep.
That's something that I think I've taken from my childhood. And, I can remember back at Madraso school, they used to do this thing, and they don't think they do it anymore. And it's kind of sad, but where they would do the Presidential Physical Fitness Award.
I remember that.
And you would do the push-ups, the pull-ups, the shuttle run, the 600-meter run, the 50-yard dash. I remember doing all that. And like one year, like my 3rd grade year, I didn't get it. And I was so mad. So like next year, I'm going to get it. That next year, I did 26 pull-ups. I did, I broke the records. And it was one of those things where once again, it was like, okay, I didn't do well. What do I need to do to fix that? And my parents were always big supporters of that. I played just about every sport. Some of them I was good at. Some of them I was not that good at. And it wasn't until I was on the Leon's midget football team that I showed up. And I can remember, all of a sudden, the parents aren't coaches here anymore. And you know how it works in you grow up and the parents are coaching this and that. And to be fair, because both my parents were, my mom was in school at the time. My dad was working as a trial lawyer, trying cases throughout the country. I didn't always get to practice on time, which then made it look like I was apathetic, like I didn't care. And so, I was rarely the starter. Then I showed up for Leon's midget football, and I kind of realized, like, I don't want to be that scrub. I don't want to be that kid that's not starting. And I was just taking kids' heads off. And then I was the first. They would line all of us up on the goal line, and they had about 80 of us, Leon's blue and Leon's white, and they were picking.
That's right.
And I was the #1 pick for Leon's White. And I played quarterback and defensive end. And then the rest is I went on to play college football at College of William Mary.
Yeah.
And when I say play college, now Mike Tomlin and Sean McDermott both went there.
That's right.
Both NFL coaches now. And when I say play, I rode the bench. But I was on the team. My goal was to get there. And William & Mary is a phenomenal academic school. I would not have gotten in without football. So, yeah. I mean, I had a great childhood. Loved growing up in Lincoln.
Share a little bit, just a little bit about your mom and dad. I think we always hear about your father. Your mom, you told me yesterday, has a pretty good history too in art and so forth.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about it, both of them.
So, my father grew up in Ottawa, Iowa. His father was a lumberman back before Home Depot and Lowe's and whatnot. And he owned lumber companies throughout the state of Iowa. And so he would travel to these lumber companies, and like every small town had a lumber company. Mm-hmm. And so there was Berry Lumber Company, and there were lumber companies named after the counties. And he would say, there isn't a lumberman out there so bad you can't learn something from him. And I've learned that about lawyers too. They may be terrible lawyers, but you can learn something from what they do right and what they do wrong. And you can learn the same thing from leaders. Mm-hmm. You can learn from leaders who do great things, and you can learn from leaders who you never want to be.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So my dad grew up there, and of course he went to his prep school was New Mexico Military Institute, where I ended up after I left Lincoln Southeast.
Yes.
And then actually I had dinner with General Stanley McChrystal this past summer. His father went to New Mexico Military Institute. I did not know that. I knew about Conrad Hilton. I knew about Roger Staubach. I did not know that Stanley McChrystal's father went there. And my father went to Stanford, undergrad, Northwestern Law School. I was an infantry officer in the Army like me, but unlike me, he went JAG, Judge Advocate General. He had his famous case where he defended the commander of the 5th Special Forces in Vietnam. It was known as the Green Beret Affair. It received national news attention. He won the case and came back and practiced in New York City until his mother fell ill, and they moved her to Lincoln, Nebraska. And that's how he ended up in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Wow.
In about 1975, I believe. And his career, of course, from there, radio show personality.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yep. He tried cases in 3 different countries. He had cases in 24 different states. Just a legendary lawyer, great at the practice of law, not so great at the business of law, which is where I come in, because I saw how he would work so hard and do these amazing things, win the miraculous trial, and then we would struggle sometimes financially to make payroll. Why was that? And the professors would say, well, law is a practice. Well, it is, but to be great, it has to be a business too. You have to have the best people, the best systems, the best technology. And if you're not willing to invest in that, you'll never get there. And so having the best people is crucial, but that's just the beginning. And if you're the best lawyer, you got to have a great paralegals. You got to have a great administrative staff. All of these things matter. I mean, think about this. I'm not going to get to my mom, but think about this. You have lawyer A, who was #1 in his class, really smart. He's doing it all on his own, right? Mm-hmm. This guy is sending out his own mail. He's shoveling the snow in the morning. He's cleaning his own toilets. He's setting out the newspaper. He's doing it all. Or would you take lawyer B, maybe who was top 20% of his class, but he has a paralegal. He has someone taking care of this stuff. And so lawyer B, all he's doing is working on the practice of law. Yes. Now we know the concept of mastery takes 10 years or 10,000 hours. Lawyer B is going to get there faster. I don't care how smart lawyer A is. Lawyer A is going to get burned out. Lawyer A is doing things that are not lawyer work. And lawyer B is going to, in the long run, will be better. I don't care how smart lawyer A is. And I learned this in the military, right? You have to do the basic blocking and tackling well. You have to become an expert in the things that you need to be an expert in. And you can't be an expert in everything, right? And do you want to be the expert at janitorial services for your law firm? No, there are experts, who provide amazing services that you can hire or to be on your team or our vendors. But if you take that core purpose and you dilute it and you dilute that focus, you will never be great at anything.
John, we'll just be quiet and listen. I want to hear your journey because I read it and I was so impressed. You were your senior in Southeast, you went to the military academy in New Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes.
Your
junior year.
End of your junior year. That's impressive. How did that get into your mind so early, so young? And then just share us your military.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, you mentioned my mom, so I'll mention my mom.
Please, yes.
My mom grew up on a farm in Wahoo, Nebraska, with 3 sisters and a brother. Brother died shortly after Vietnam, but the 3 sisters, they still own farmland there. But my mom grew up and she wanted to be an artist, and she is today. Margaret Berry, she still is an artist. She was the resident artist at the Cornhusker Hotel one year. I remember. Anyway, she's always been in art, but she also got her master. I think it was her MBA when we were growing up. She was going to school while she had 4 young kids. But my mom wanted to study art, so she, the Catholic Church, of course, is known for the greatest art in the world, right? You talk about the Rome, and she wanted to go to Rome and the Vatican, and so that it's just like the Army recruiter. Hey, come from, you'll get this opportunity. And then she ended up in Western Nebraska, and that's when she decided maybe this is not for me. And so she left, and she met my dad, married my dad. But she's an amazing mother. Always supported us. I think she gave me Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich when I was like 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
She would give us library books for Christmas, wrap up library books, because she wanted us to read, right? That's how you get an education. You have to go to school. You've got to get good grades. But if you really want to learn, there needs to be some self-study, learn, have discipline. Okay. So that's, now that you know my parents, now we can move into me.
After that, I'm going to make sure that my grandkids watch this show and listen to what you just said. Go ahead.
Yeah. I learned that, leaders are readers, and leaders, if you want to lead people, you must constantly learn. The world is evolving, and no one wants to follow a dinosaur, right? No one wants to follow someone who, people get all freaked out about AI, artificial intelligence, right? But the machine learning, that stuff has been around for a long time. And the problem is most people just haven't paid attention. And so they get intimidated by stuff like generative AI and what's happening next. But you don't have to be. Look, last month I was at JP Morgan Chase headquarters in New York City running a panel with these directors talking about what's next for AI. And it was, and I have a friend that started an AI company 6 years ago. And I'm like, do you think I'm qualified to be on this panel? And he said, look, you're leading the panel. And he said, yes. I said, but we both agree AI isn't ready in the legal space. He said, yeah, but he said, but John, you use it in your training education, you use it in your marketing, you use it in all these things. You're ready to teach other, you're ready to moderate a panel. But then I get up there and these guys are way smarter than, I'm just worried about asking a bad question, because intelligence is not measured by the answer you give, but by the question you ask. And so I'm up there trying to ask intelligent questions. I'm highly prepped. And of course, at that point, the iPad I was going to use for notes goes out. So then I got to wing it. But hey, I've tried enough cases. I know how to wing it when things go bad. I'm always prepared. So anyway, my story, now going back to me and why I'm here today. I said, growing up in Lincoln, had a paper out. I've always had a very strong work ethic. Played football throughout high school. And I wasn't that good in high school. I was great at midget football. I wasn't that great. I started working out hard, eating a diet like you wouldn't believe, like 7 meals a day. My dad found this guy who was back then a trainer. And he's like, look, you just need to work out 3 times a week. And like, I will crush you. And he did. And we would eat we would lift weights till we threw up. And I really learned about like what it was going to take. And then my junior year, my dad offered me, before my junior year, the opportunity to go to New Mexico Military Institute, which was his alma mater, where he went to high school. It was weird to leave my friends at that age. Mm-hmm. My dad, back then, people didn't have credit like they do now. I had a 1965 Mustang that my dad took on a fee. A client owed him money, so that was my car. So I had a car, I had a girlfriend. I went to school, did well, was lifting weights, playing football. I loved everything I was doing. But there was something about it. There was a calling to it. There was something that made me feel like I need to take this opportunity. And it's one of those voices you hear in your head and in your heart that go, just go. And so I left it. I went to New Mexico Military Institute, had a great football career there. Mm-hmm. Academically was all of a sudden I'm in study hall now from 6 o'clock at night till 9:30. And I'm actually studying. I got good grades at Lincoln Southeast, but it wasn't that hard. All of a sudden I'm taking difficult classes. Oh my God. And I'm struggling in some of those classes. And I'd have to get up at Reveille at 06. Every day we would have uniform inspections where we would shine our brass, shine our boots, military creases in the uniform. And then someone would come in and inspect our room. And if your room was screwed up, your uniform was screwed up, and you got enough demerits, you were marching tours on the weekend. And it was tough. Your first year, you're a rat, a recruit at training. You have no real privileges or rights. But as a young high school kid, I mean, it builds discipline because you realize like you have very little free time, and what free time you have, you could be using it to get better at a skill. And so that was my life in high school up till when I made my college decision.
I have just a quick question of what you just said. Going through that type of thing in high school, you're in, and even though you were a very disciplined person, even in high school, how was that emotionally for you? Being that far away from home, being that far away from your friends, being that far away from everything that was familiar, and then you've got these officers in your face, going bam, 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 you did this, or you're gonna get this. I mean, surely there was a little bit inside you, even though you were very driven, going, "Oh man, did I really Did I really want to sign up for this? Did I do this voluntarily?"
I have some unique attributes, I think. I've never been homesick. And once I make a decision,
that's it.
That's it.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's a great skill.
I admire you.
It's in the DNA, isn't it, John?
It's in the DNA. And look, I mean, back when I had a paper, the toughest thing was not getting up at 6 a.m, delivering the papers. And I had the sun in the morning and the afternoon route, and I detasseled corn. The toughest thing was going door to door, collecting money, and having adults lie to you and say, "I paid you last week," and you'd be like, "No, I got it right here." So I had built some resilience back then, but I have always been decisive. And look, as I have become more mature, I've learned that the best lesson I've learned is that feedback is a gift. But I've also learned that being decisive, and a lot of times you do need to make quick decisions and follow your gut, and it's almost that animalistic instinct, that lion out there in the Serengeti, whether it has 4 legs or has a leg chewed off by a hyena, that lion is going to eat today. And I think that you have to approach life that way, that, when you're in, we're built to survive. We're built for success. And that's why we were put on this earth, to build something bigger and better. And so we can't get too wrapped up in our own emotions or how we're feeling. When you start worrying about other people, same thing at going back to military school, I was worried about my, the cadets to my left and to my right. How do I take care of them? Because there are people suffering more than me. And there were people that were homesick. There were people that had all sorts of issues. When you start worrying about yourself, feeling sorry for yourself, life is miserable. But I cared about the football team. I cared about, my fellow cadets, and then later the cadets that I was leading. That took up all my time and mental energy. Did I miss my girlfriend? Yeah. Who wouldn't? Did I miss my parents? A little bit. But it was about that adventure, and then it was about the well-being of others, of those under your charge.
John, please, due to time, jump into the story. That what I want to hear about is the Army Ranger School when you hurt your shoulder and you had to quit. This is a
I failed that one.
But this is a okay.
But
that is a powerful story, because that left an imprint on you. I heard the story, and I was very impressed by that.
All right, well, cut me off when you need to, because this could actually be a great. Maybe people will tune in because the one's here now. Okay, so the first time I ever quit, I was playing football at college, William & Mary. Right, I was riding the bench. I got injured my sophomore year. I just did the scout team my whole freshman year. Sophomore year, there's a glimmer of hope. I had a pretty bad injury. I came back, I saw multiple doctors. At William & Mary, they were phenomenal in the training room, getting us to doctors. And he said, no contact for a year. I'm like, well, what do I do? My coach was like, well, you'll go to team meetings. You'll continue to lift. You'll go to the trainer every day. See that cord that the coach has on the sideline before they had the wireless? You had a cord that you carry behind the coach. You'll be carrying the cord on Saturdays. And, playing college football was my dream. And I knew that this might be it. Could I really take a year off and come back? And then I realized, do I want to? And so at the end of that year, I went to talk to my position coach. We would have annual meetings, and the running back coach that I was supposed to meet with the head coach. And I went to the running back coach. His name was Max Kelch. And I said, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can take a year off with no contact. I don't think this is what I want to do. And he's like, well, look, the doctor said that maybe you shouldn't have contact again ever. So I quit. And that was the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, I still have nightmares and dreams about quitting that today. So fast forward, I'm getting ready to go to law school. I applied to law school. One of the best schools was Creighton Law. Every school said you can defer for 1 year and then you have to come. They all wanted me to go JAG. Not me. I wanted to be an airborne ranger. I wanted to be an infantry officer. I didn't want to be a JAG. I didn't want to be a lawyer in the Army. I mean, my dad did, but whatever. That's his path. So the most schools I talked to said you can defer for 1 year. Creighton said, and my mom at Creighton said, take as long as you need. So I go through infantry officer's basic course at Fort Benning. I go through airborne school, no problems. I'm in great shape. And keep in mind, I had to transform my body from being a football player, the guy that could bench press almost 400 pounds. I'm worried about my 40 time. I'm bulking up, to running a sub 12-minute 2-mile, being able to do 82 push-ups in a minute, 92 sit-ups. So I totally transformed my body in about a year. And I get to Ranger School, and physically, I knew I can hack this. Whatever. I'll make it through. And I went through the first phase, Fort Benning phase, no problem. Second phase was the mountain phase in Dahlonega, Georgia, and it's in the winter. We went in the winter, and it is brutal when you're trying to climb mountains and your fingers are stinging and numb. And you're not eating, you're not sleeping, they're depriving you of food and sleep to simulate combat stress, because they want to see, anybody can be a great leader in the sunshine with plenty to eat. They want to see what a real leader looks like when you're deprived of food and sleep, when you're not thinking right. And that's what happened.
Combat situation.
Yep, I went through, I was droning. Back then, what droning is you're walking on a patrol, carrying all your gear. So imagine this, because I was one of the bigger guys, I was carrying the M60 machine gun, carrying, anywhere from 60 to 90 pounds on my back, depending how much ammo we had and what phase of the mission we were in. And I was just sleepwalking. I fell off the side of a mountain, fell all the way down, got up. I could not lift my left shoulder. Now, when you go to Army Ranger School, it's not just a bunch of guys that want to be there. Most people don't even get the opportunity to go. We had guys who were Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces, Marine Force Recon. So this is the best of the best. And not everybody gets to go. You are privileged to be there.
It's Top Gun.
Top Gun, but for, I shouldn't say this, so I won't. So it was tough. And I injured that shoulder, and I couldn't lift my left shoulder. And fortunately, we had a Special Forces medic in our squad. And he's there as a student. He's like, dude, do not tell anybody. He's like, when I went through selection, Special Forces, same thing happened to a guy. They had to medically discharge him, you'll get recycled. And when I was going through Ranger School, there were no recycles, which means you start over day one. So he's like, dude, just if you can hack it. If not, there's no shame. I'm like, well, I'm not doing this again. I'm like, this sucks. I'm not going through this again. And he said, and so I next thing I know, I hear Barry report, and I show, you're the platoon leader. Now all of a sudden I'm in a leadership position, and my shoulders, and now my head is I'm just thinking, how am I going to do this? And I totally lost confidence. And I was so aggravated and so angered by that injury. And so why did this happen to me? Why now? And that affected my judgment. I mean, you're already exhausted, right? And I failed my patrol. As soon as that happened, they medics looked at me, they evac'd me back, and they're like, what's going on? And then you're out. And I remember I had a just coincidence. You don't talk about divine intervention, about why sometimes we would come back. There's a guy named Captain Brock Perkuchin, who was a West Pointer, also Army Ranger, combat engineer. And he, for some reason, he called the school to check in on me. And he called at the exact time that I got brought back to the headquarters. They told me, Barry, there's a phone call for you. I'm like, what? How would anybody not know that I'm in the field? And so I talked to him, and he's like, look, dude, just go back. You'll make it. So 6 months later, my shoulder mostly healed. I went back through the school, straight through, and graduated, got my Ranger tab, and then went to my first unit, deployed to Bosnia. We were in Bosnia in 99, right when Kosovo was starting. And I thought, this is it. We're going to see combat. No, it was a peacekeeping mission. And I came back. I went to law school, but I stayed in the Guard. And then I got activated again went to Iraq as a company commander, ended up doing 20 years of total military service.
All right, welcome back in. Second segment. What's next? 24 Harrison Arns on the ones and twos. We got the host Mike and Jerry and the guest John Barry in studio today. Don't got a ton of time here left on the second segment, so I'll go ahead and throw it over to Mike and Jerry.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We're just having a great talk with John Barry. He's the author of Veteran Led. It's a compelling exploration of how military leadership principles can effectively apply to civilian life, particularly in business, personal development. Drawing from your extensive experiences as a U.S. Army veteran and successful lawyer, John is going to share valuable insights to the book. John, just again, thank you for your service in the military. I just wanted to summarize this a little bit. I mean, you were deployed in Bosnia, 1999, a tremendous leader there, served in Operation Iraqi Freedom. You're also the battalion commander here at the Nebraska Army National Guard. And I did not know until last night when I was reading this, in the National Guard Hall of Fame.
Right. Yeah. So I had, after I left active duty, I stayed in the National Guard, which helped pay for law school. I was a company commander. And when my daughter was about 4 months old, I received notice that my company was going to deploy to Iraq. I would be commanding that company in Iraq. And I came back and I was thinking about getting out. I mean, it's very tough to be a practicing lawyer, running a law firm, and also serving in the National Guard. But that's why they call those people 2 times a citizen, because you really are doing double the duty for your country and your community. And it was difficult. But I was fortunate that I served with some amazing people. And one of them called me one time and said, I would really like for you to help run our officer and warrant officer candidate school. And to me, that was the game changer. I was getting paid to develop leaders, and I had a full-time staff. Obviously, I'm a part-time soldier, but I would have call in maybe once a week. And that taught me how to lead remote. I mean, right now, Barry Law has almost 150 employees. I believe we have lawyers in about 8 states. I think about 30 of our employees are remote, but when I was boots on the ground, I had to have impact. And so I learned that. Like I said, my company command in Iraq, I had people in 3 different locations. We were in Al Asad. We had people in Fallujah. We had people in MNCI North Baghdad. We had someone in a little fob called Dogwood. I mean, we had soldiers spread everywhere. And so I remember one Christmas, I'm traveling around bringing Christmas presents, and I drop them off at one of the fobs, and there's no helicopters out. And luckily there was a Marine lieutenant who's like, I'm taking a patrol through Fallujah tomorrow. I'll drop you off. But it was like, man, and so I remember those great experiences, but I had a great time serving as a company commander. And then I ended my career as the battalion commander of the officer and warrant officer candidate school. And I went in there with a completely different attitude. I saw that, I didn't want to go in there and just build, lieutenants and warrant officers. I wanted to be the absolute best. And so we were in a region that had Arkansas, Texas, Missouri. I think there was like 12 states, and they have streamers for the ruck march, the academics, the land navigation. And I think there was something else. And I'm like, we're coming in, we're taking all 4 streamers. And so I looked at what we were doing. Some of the stuff that it might be considered, hazing but it wasn't, but it was just a waste of time. I'm like, you know what? Like, why are these guys sleeping enough? No, I want them to sleep. I want them to, and look, in between 10 minutes of classes, we can make them do push-ups till their arms fall off, but we are going to be the best trained, most competitive. And so all the garbage that we're doing that is, I don't like pomp and circumstance, dog and pony stuff, military ceremonies. We're here to win. All right. And we're here for a championship, and that championship is that streamer. And I'm going to walk away with those streamers. And so I was there as the company commander, got the streamers, had an amazing team. And then I came back as the battalion commander. And it was the same thing. It was like, I need more people. I need better people. And I remember my boss, who was the best leaders I've had, say, John, what do you need to do to be successful? And how do I get out of your way? But if you need something, come back. And I told him, I said, look, recruiting I don't know what the recruiting group is doing here, but we're short. We're going to be short. I want to go to every single battalion in the state and go to my peer battalion commanders and recruit. And that's what I did. And so I went, I didn't even go to drill anymore. For the next 90 days, I put one of my senior captains in charge and a major. And I said, you guys run. And I went, throughout the state, and I recruited, because that's what it took. Was I the recruiter? No, but that's what it took. And you don't do what's reasonable. You do what is necessary.
Let's jump in the book. Love this. Just the cover. We got this when I ordered. I couldn't believe it. Veteran-led military leadership lessons to help you team, survive, thrive, and dominate by John S. Barry. What was the seed that planted this? What were you thinking? Why write the book? That's a lot of work. We've written a book. It's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, I go back to 2001. I wanted to write a book on organizational leadership. At the time, I had somebody that had offered me money to write a book about PTSD in military service. And it was like, it wasn't worth the money. It was like $10,000 or something. And I didn't want to write the book. And I thought, I don't want an advance on something I don't want to write. And so I thought, well, what would I want to write? And I thought, I want to write the leadership manual for Barry Law. And that's what this became. And so all the lessons that we learn over and over again, who was it that said, the thing about history is we don't really learn much from history, right? We keep making the same mistakes. And the thing about veteran led is I do the after action review in every chapter. And some of the lessons I picked up on right away, other mistakes I had to make over and over again, like kick me in the teeth 6 times before I get this. But I wanted to capture those lessons. I wanted to capture them. I wanted to give them to my team. So every new team member that gets a copy of the book. But also I wanted to honor some of those leaders who developed me and say thank you in a way that would, I don't want to say immortalize them, but show my gratitude in a way that they know that they will not be forgotten. And they gave me a better life because of their leadership.
Honoring them and telling them that they have left a legacy.
John, jump into, because I just love this, the core values, the themes: survival, thrive, and dominating. Share that in more detail.
Right. So in the Army, we have crawl, walk, run, right? You get some new private in the basic. They can't just run a lane, sticks lane, shoot, move, communicate. You can't learn all those skills. You must first learn how to carry a weapon, march with a weapon, clean a weapon, before you're even allowed to fire a weapon, right? And then you fire for familiarization, then you fire for qualification, and then we're going to make the scenarios much more complex, where you are moving down range firing, where there may be tracer rounds flying overhead, but we're going to make it much more complicated. But you can't run until you walk. But you can't run and walk until you crawl. So crawl is the initial phase, walk is the intermediate phase, and run is where you're firing on all cylinders. Well, as individuals, we survive. As leaders, we need to learn to survive as a leader. If you cannot lead yourself, you cannot lead anyone else. That is survive. Thrive is leading as a small team. As a small team, you can thrive. You can help others do even more. You start to multiply your capabilities by bringing in other talented individuals. And then dominate is big Army level. I thought big Army was dumb because it seemed to move so slow in all the bureaucracy. But the truth is, looking at other organizations, there's a reason why we are the greatest fighting force in the history of the world. We are so agile and so big because we have processes, and having great processes and putting great people into run those processes. That's the dominate phase. So survive, thrive, dominate, but you have to go in that order. You can't just show up one day and dominate.
That's true. One thing I
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. No. There's something I just saw that I wanted to ask. There's something, you see where so many people in today's world, in the civilian world, it's siloed. People don't talk. But you have a wonderful thing here in chapter 2 called the buddy system.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah. Talk about how valuable that was or is.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, you get to basic training or boot camp or wherever you went, and you're assigned a buddy. You do not eat without your buddy. You do not shower without your buddy. You do not go to the latrine without your buddy. That buddy's going to be there. And if you get caught without a buddy, you're going to get smoked, right? That drill sergeant's going to tear you up, and they're going to find your buddy and tear up your buddy. But you learn that, no one does it alone. And if you have a buddy to hold you accountable, and someone you have to take care of, life is going to be a lot more rich and fulfilling, and you're going to be better. You're just going to be a better person with a better buddy. Now, the problem with the military is sometimes you get a dirtbag assigned as a buddy, and you have to bear that cross. You got to carry that person. And that's tough. But, as you get older, you get to decide who that buddy is, whether it's your spouse, who's going to be your mentor, the leaders, the people on your team, who are your buddies going to be? And I have a friend who was a West Pointer, Robert Solano. I kind of wrote about he wrote a book called Alpha Couples, and he was a helicopter pilot, West Pointer, great guy. And how important his wife is. Now, she's a lawyer, owns law firms, like every place that, as you know, in the military, you move every 3 years. She would open a new law firm, and it was a great buddy system. And I think you have to find those people in your life. I think, who do you want to be a hero to? That's from Dan Sullivan, also an Army vet, but you get to choose who you're going to be a hero to, and you want to be a hero to that buddy. If you don't want to be a hero to that person, don't make him your buddy. And sometimes being a hero is leading, but sometimes being a hero is following. And, I wouldn't have made it through Ranger School that second time without my Ranger buddy. As a company commander, I would not have been successful without my first sergeant. I can go through my entire life where there was somebody who propped me up, who when I was weak, when I was doubting myself, sometimes they came up to me and they just said, you can do this. Other times, they gave me like a kick in the butt and said, John, like, you're better than this. So the
John,
buddy system matters.
Tell me how that looks. Tell me how that looks in a business.
So in the business, right? Like sometimes my buddy was, when I was practicing law, was that paralegal who kept me completely accountable, stayed on top of all my cases. She'd come in, like it'd be like 6 o'clock at night. She'd be like, hey, I know you're doing stuff. You got to call this guy back because you said you want to call everybody back the same day. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. John, that is a core value. You had better do it. So I'd be like, oh man, come on. But I would do it. I'd make the phone call, but I needed that buddy to hold me accountable. Now my chief operating officer is a former fighter pilot, major general in the Air Force, 2-star. And,
Wow.
I need a buddy there because now that I'm much more front stage, whether I want to be in the courtroom or speaking or writing books or talking to people, great. But I need someone backstage running the organization for me. And so the buddy system evolves. But as you level up, your buddy will level up. And I think one of my greatest buddies, Dennis Krecklow, right now he is the command sergeant major of the Nebraska National Guard. So he's the highest ranking enlisted person in the Nebraska National Guard. Still great friends. And we talk about back 20 years ago when we first served together. And there's just some amazing when you have that buddy system, both buddies get better.
John, using Barry Law as the example, because you shared some stories with me, how using these principles, just people may not realize how large Barry Law has become, how many states you're in, how many employees you have, and talk about in general terms the end result. What are you seeing the end result? Because maybe there's some lawyers out there or business people that are not using these principles, lack the skills. You talked about your father. It was an interesting story to me. Very successful lawyer, but he said struggled. I mean, a lot of them do business-wise because of lack of maybe processes.
Yeah, I think lawyers, and like, okay, let me hurt some feelings here. Lawyers are generally not leaders. Lawyers are technician by trade. Most lawyers do not want to be in a leadership position. And so some lawyers that are phenomenal lawyers, you put them in, and I've done this, put them in a leadership position and they fail. And people think, especially because of the way the law professors train us, and we see big law, that really what's going to happen is you're going to go out, you're going to become a partner at a big firm, and you're going to be involved in committees and making decisions. And look, I went through the NSBA Leadership Academy, and I think I learned a lot of great things. But I will tell you, in my opinion, leadership is not about consensus. Leadership is about results. And you don't get to results with a bunch of people arguing and debating. You need someone to step up and make a decision and be held accountable for that decision.
Exactly. We need to take another break. Unfortunately, we'll be right back with John Barry, the author of Veteran Led.
All right, welcome back in. Final segment, What's Next 24, with the guest, John Barry, in studio today. We only got a little bit of time here left, so throw it over to the host.
Well, I just want to mention, we have just a little bit of time. We're, again, with John Barry, veteran of, author of Veteran Led. John, BarryLaw.com, where can they get the book, and how can they get in touch with you?
The book can be purchased through Amazon or any place that fine books are sold. The way people can get a hold of me, you can find me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's about the only social media channel that I really look at. I have all the channels that my team does, but I don't really pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
I always think you either use social media or get used by it. And so I try to stay pretty positive. I'm on a low information diet. If I can't do something about something, I generally don't get involved or listen to it. But if you want to learn more about Barry Law, go to BarryLaw.com, BerryLaw.com. We have offices in Lincoln, Omaha, Papillion, and Council Bluffs.
Also, John, please talk about, because I think you've got the podcast. Introduce your podcast.
The Veteran Led Podcast. So here's what happened. I started writing the book in 2001, ran into some snags with publishers. The content was there, and I just started putting it out. And I had a great assistant, Betsy Armadas. She helped build the podcast, helped get the book fixed. And, we started inviting guests. And next thing I know, I've got General David Petraeus on the podcast, Shiloh Harris. I have all these amazing human beings, veterans or military spouses. If you're not a veteran military spouse, I don't want you on the podcast, because that's what it's really about, building a bigger, better future for veterans and veterans showing how that's done. So some of these veterans Hell, one guy, there's a 50-mile march from Lincoln to Omaha. And I have a friend, through another friend, that had his leg blown off in Afghanistan, just hanging on by tendons. They were able to reattach the bone. He went back to Afghanistan, earned the Silver Star in combat, and then he recently retired. He's now his name's Ryan Hendrickson, wrote a book called Tip of the Spear. He's now in Ukraine with a tip the spear landmine removing landmines, because landmines indiscriminately kill people, and they will continue to do so for decades unless you remove them. But Ryan called me once. I was in a horrible mountain biking accident, punctured lung, 6 ribs broken, right clavicle broken, and we were going to do the march. And he's like, dude, I have a speaking engagement in Colorado. I'm coming back from Ukraine. Like, it's not going to happen. I'm like, well, let me tell you about my bike accident. And then 2 weeks before the march, he's like, he just texted me, I'll do it if you do it. And so we did the 50-mile march from, and he went from Lincoln to Omaha. He was on my podcast. And then that is, I've had so many amazing heroes on that podcast. And so part of Veteran Led is the guests who have built bigger, better futures. And part of it is kind of some of the stuff in the books or the lessons that I learned. I learned a lesson, I want to push it out. And now I push out lessons every Monday morning to my team. We call it Stand To. It comes from Rogers Rangers. That's when the French and the Indians would attack. So you had to be ready. But, you think back, to how life was back then. You would be attacked at sunrise. Now we have night vision and we attack the enemy before they come to us at sun. But back then, that was it. So we at sunrise Monday morning, we're going to attack the day before the day attacks us. We're going to have our plan. We're going to be ready. And we're going to come in and we're going to take the terrain that we want to take.
Oh, John, that's awesome. I just love your mindset on this. Tell us real quick in about a minute too, though, your contribution or focus on veterans.
Yeah. So as Dan Sullivan says, you get to choose who you want to be a hero to, and we want to be a hero to our nation's heroes. You look at the less than 1%. You look at the greatest people that I've ever known, the greatest mentors, coaches that I've had in my life. They were all veterans, and because they understood something about giving back. And what they say is that the veteran doesn't fight for what's the soldier or the Marine doesn't fight for what's in front of them. They fight for what's behind them. And if you really want to show your country that you love your country, you want to show your family that you love your family, then you raise that hand, you swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. You've done something that 99% of Americans will never do. That makes you elite. That makes you better. And you're going to grow from that, because once you make that level, that commitment, it stays with you forever.
John, we've got about a minute left. I want to give you the microphone. You get the opportunity to speak to the community and say anything you'd like to say.
Well, first of all, I'm very proud to be from Lincoln, Nebraska. My father, John Stevens Berry, the famous trial lawyer who has done so much great work here in Lincoln, certainly made my life a little bit easier, right? And so I'm grateful for my parents. I'm grateful for growing up in the Lincoln community. Lincoln is a very special city to me. I've had so many jury trials here, so many wins, but also so many opportunities. I've represented so many great people. But I've also had so much great support from coaches, mentors, other leaders, leaders in the legal community. I can't, I think that, no one gets there alone. And I'm very proud to be from Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm very proud of the opportunities I've had. I'm proud of many of the many wins on my home turf in Lincoln. There's nothing better than winning a jury trial in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I bet it is. That's awesome.
But when you grow up, you don't realize how blessed you are to grow up in a great, safe community with tons of opportunity. And that's what Lincoln is to me.
Absolutely. John, it is. We're so glad you're here today. We need to close this out. But I want to just add, I recommend this book to anyone who's looking for, again, veteran-led military leadership, lessons to help your team survive, thrive, and dominate by John S. Berry. There it is. There's the book today. With that, we need to close out, and we'll see you next week. John, thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.